Our August coffee chat as we continue our series on founder stories. We are delighted to have in with us Monique and Jeff Roberts, the founders of Yellowhammer Coffee, for a great conversation. Certainly excited to learn from them and to hear more about their story. Want to continue just to encourage you to stay tuned to the Founder Story series. We're excited because in the month of September, we'll have David Morris from QB Country. If you're not familiar with David, David is the founder of a company that specifically mentors and develops incredible quarterbacks all across the country. And then in October, we're delighted to have, you go ahead and raise your hand, Delilah Null, founder of Black Girls Healing House. She'll be our guest on that program, and we're excited because we are in talks to have Bear Walker join us in either November or December. Anytime you get to hear a founder's story, to me, I think you come away as impacted. You get to hear what that journey looks like, how they have endured the bumps and challenges across the pathway, and moving from there. So we're excited about that. A couple other things that I'll say, keep your eyes posted. We're going to be posting very, very soon about a new program that is going to be in Mobile. The program is called the Idea Accelerator. And this is a nationwide cohort that we have an opportunity to place 10 individuals from Mobile into. It is not, I've already founded my company. It's literally, I have an experiment for what I think could be a business that I want to try. And so you'll see that coming. That's a great opportunity made possible to us through a number of partners, including the Capital Readiness Program, the Minority Business Development Agency. And so we're excited about that. But we're here for you guys. We're here for you guys. So first things first, because you didn't just get born and have coffee coming out your pores, give us a little backdrop. First, how did you all meet?
So we met in Colorado Springs, actually. I was born and raised in France, so I'm from there, dual citizenship, but you know. And then I went to a leadership academy in Colorado Springs. Was just going to be there a couple years, go back home after that. And then he came to that same leadership academy on my third year there. So we met.
Sorry for you.
Ruined her life, man.
ruined her life. Wow. There's the true founding story.
He told me I'd live on the beach, so that's why I moved. I'm just kidding.
We got water down in Alabama. Come see us.
But no, we met. So we met there. He just did a year there. I continued working a job there, and we developed a really good friendship, long distance. Not dating at all, but just a very solid friendship. And then out of that, probably 2 years into that, he'd come back and visit. He had a bunch of friends there. We just, I think, got a little, after maybe 2 or 3 years of that long distance friendship, I think, is when we started being like, you know what, maybe we like each other. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's something a little more here than I knew there was something when she started dating someone else. And I got really pissed about it. I was like, why would I get pissed about that? That's dumb.
That's when the feelings raise up. That's
yeah. Then I was like, oh boy, I think there's more here than I was willing to admit to myself. So yeah.
And that was what year when you guys originally met?
So we met in 2003, actually.
Okay.
So we've known, or 2002. So we've known each other over 2 decades, which blows my mind. Because I'm only 25, so.
I feel you. I feel you. It's weird when that happens. I don't know how math doesn't math, but it is what it is.
But yeah, so, and then we got married in 2009, so, and I moved here in 2007. I've been in Mobile since 2007.
Wow, look at that. You are really a long-time Mobilian now.
Yeah, that was weird. I'm getting to where, I moved from France at 18, and I've been here 16 years. It's going to be really weird to me when I reach the 18-year mark of being here, and then I've lived over or I've lived more here than I have in where I grew up. That's going to be weird. Haven't reached it yet, but a couple years from now I will.
I was going to say, it's definitely an interesting piece when you get that. And Jeff, you're a native of the area,
Yep.
Yeah.
Native of Mobile, born and raised. That's cool.
Absolutely. And what's great is the first company you founded is really, it's Roberts, the Roberts family.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And so you've produced a lot of great offspring. I say a lot of great offspring. If you ever see their family, their delightful family, and they're packing them all in tow, and they are the cutest kids in the world. So
Only 4.
it's only 4, but I always say once you move from like zone 2-on-1 to man to when you're zone the opposite end,
It's a different ball game.
Then it's like there could be 50 of them, and I don't
Right,
know because they're gonna. No,
It's so true.
It's truly amazing, and I had a chance to meet Jeff originally about 8 years ago, and I remember Jeff was working for a church here in the Mobile area. They used to come in and do some things in our co-working space over on Government Street, and I remember like Jeff and I, like, hey, I like this guy. He's cool. Good things happening. And I remember distinctly there was one day after we'd known each other a little bit, he just came to me and he was like, Todd, I'm quitting. I was like, oh, really? He's like, no, it's not like I'm not unhappy. I'm starting a coffee company.
And you said, praying for you.
I mean, it was like, huh? Je ne sais quoi? Je ne comprends pas. It was that moment that it was like, not just I'm thinking about it. It's I'm doing it.
Yep.
So back us up before that, because I know that there's more than just I'm going to start a company and we jump out into it. So talk about really how the two of you guys are thinking about this and where Yellowhammer really does create its origin story from.
So I'm just big on culture. So you've probably all worked in places, companies. I just had several positions in several companies, and it was just getting your nose rubbed in horrible culture. Just the leadership, the way people made decisions, the way things worked. It was just the way teams worked, all of it. It was just not fun. So I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this than what is being in this place, right? And so it came out of a lot of probably anger, which is probably my top emotion. A lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of desperation. And so that's why it was so abrupt. Like when I was like, I'm quitting and we're doing this, like it was a done deal. Like we were the dumbest people on the planet, by the way. So we had no money, no income. We both quit our jobs on the exact same day. And we were like, this has to work because we don't have a plan B, right? And so there's something to be said about that. Like if you ever have a plan B, you're like, oh, this is too hard. Let me kick over to this idea, right? But there's something about just saying, whatever it takes, I'm going to do this, and it's going to work. And so,
How did you guys decide coffee?
oh, it's a good question. No, here was the deal. So I kept seeing food trucks in Mobile, and the turnover rate for food trucks are really pretty intense. Like, I mean, they'll do a 6-month run, and then the truck's for sale, right? Then another one starts up, and they do hot dogs, and they'll do burgers, or they'll do barbecue. So I'm looking at that, and I'm like, this is really tough, man. Like, why do people keep getting into this when I can't see it work successfully? So then I had the genius. So I worked at Starbucks in college, and I was like, they should just try something else. Like, what if we tried something that wasn't hot dogs and burgers? I'm like, what if someone actually tried to put a Starbucks inside of a food truck and did something different? Like, that would be cool. So I thought I was a genius. I was like, wow, I'm the smartest guy on the planet. Original idea. Then I Googled it and saw that there's coffee trucks all around the nation. And I was like, I'm not as smart as I thought. But it was original for this area. So then I reached out to a couple of food truck guys or coffee truck guys and started to get information. What does this take? That was the first time I'd ever heard in my life the word commissary. And I was like, what is a commissary? And he was like, bro, you have to have a commissary. I was like, all right, what is that? Well, you have to be associated with a commercial kitchen that is health department approved. And so then I started doing my homework on that. Well, how do I figure that out? How do I get that? The whole nine. But yeah, that was just kind of the idea. Like, what if we took a Starbucks idea, tried to put it in a truck, and just did something different? Like, could that work?
And I think the coffee backstory, though, too. I mean, he'd always had like a bit of a entrepreneurial spirit in him. Even when he took those other jobs, it was still, we'd always talked about business. Like, he was always like, well, what am I going to do? What are we going to do next? And the coffee thing came. I mean, I remember we were at the fair one year, probably 3 or 4 years before Yellowhammer. looking for something hot to drink because it was freezing. And it was like, we got hot chocolate and it was water and
You just
chocolate.
said freezing in Mobile, and I call your bluff on that one.
It was freezing for
It was
Mobile.
cold. Okay, cold for Mobile. All right, let's
Your
get that
nose
out there.
hairs were
Yeah.
not freezing like they would in Paris,
There we
but
go.
it was still very cold. And it was one of the, we were just looking for something hot to drink, and it was like hot chocolate stand. It was like this watery powder mix, and so that was one of the thoughts of like, man, what if we did something and brought it, to people? And then we actually, like this guy, when we registered for our wedding, registry, the only thing he registered for was a vacuum coffee maker. I don't know if you've ever seen him, the little like contraptions, the big.
It's the coolest thing ever. If you've never seen a
what I'm
vacuum
talking
coffee
about?
maker, dude,
Anyway.
the water boils up the glass straw, and then it whatever, and then it repressurizes and comes back down. Like it's
So
really
You look
cool.
like a chemist then,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
It
okay,
looks
there you go.
like-
I know
yeah.
that one. Yeah.
So we've always been interested in coffee. We had this. This is again before thinking of it as a business idea. Love community. We had this little like espresso machine that you would operate with an NO2 cartridge. I mean, a little contraption. People would be like, "Hey, can you come over to my house? I've got some people coming over, and can we make coffee?" Right? And so it was just we did that even before the business. So I think whenever we started thinking about something, it was just like, let's do coffee. Like, so anyway, we don't do the chemist thing on the trailer at our locations, but it's a fun gig.
I think that's such an interesting thing, and I know, Jeff, you talked about the commissary and what that looked like, and I knew that there was more behind the scenes there. I remember as you were walking through the commissary, that was one of the times we were very early kind of in Mobile having conversations around, man, this is a real challenge. It's a real challenge because if you know our Mobile community and the greater Gulf Coast area, it's a very heavy food scene. And you mentioned like with the idea of a truck, a trailer, there's a lot of turnover that happens there. We see it in the restaurant scene. It's not an easy industry to break into and stay and then grow. So you guys did this truck thing though, and this is where, to me, it's very interesting. I will put out a disclaimer. Be very careful if you're ever teaching entrepreneurship in a higher ed setting about who you invite to speak to your class. Because I ended up inviting the gentleman to my left to speak to some, I guess they're freshmen through senior entrepreneurship students that I had. And one of the first things, now, I had a guy that was much nicer who asked me first if he could say this, and I said yes. Jeff rolls in and he says, hey, this higher ed thing is stupid. Don't worry about it. Just go out and start businesses. You're going to fail and learn and grow and do all this stuff, man. You don't need any of this. And I'm looking at him going,
I think the enrollment for that class went down drastically.
funny enough, it actually didn't. It went up because it was like,
'cause they're like,
that's where the
we're having
truth
guys like
telling
this.
is at. That's where the truth telling is at.
Look, man, I sold your class, all right?
There it was. It was great. It was great. Good conversations. And lots of things happen. And again, what I think is really neat. So let's talk a little bit about, because I think the scaling process is always one of the greatest challenges. People come in, and I've seen a lot of times people get enamored with the end result. And the end result is great. It's glorious. I've got 50 locations, or I IPO'd, or I'm a $1 billion company. And that's awesome. But you don't get there without opening your first thing. So for you guys, talk a little bit about your decision, because I think you guys had a really smart mindset in the sense of how to go about getting yourself implemented into the market and build the company. Where did it all start, and how does it start for you guys thinking about moving forward?
So it started really simple. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, when we first started, everything we needed to sell coffee for that entire week would show up on my front door in a UPS box. It was like a bag of coffee, 2 bottles of syrups, a couple of little other things, and that would last the entire week. It was crazy. Now we have a 5,000-foot warehouse. I don't know how big this is. 3,000 feet maybe? 5,000 foot?
Probably 5.
Do you know the footprint? Okay. So it's a warehouse probably a little bit bigger than this, stacked to the ceiling, completely full of anything you can imagine coffee related. And so, but we started simple and then just worked our way up and was like, okay, we're growing a little bit. Like, now it's 2 boxes, right? Okay, now it's 3 boxes. And then you get into economies of scale. You get into buying higher volume and bigger discounts. So then we had to get a warehouse. Then we had to get a forklift. Then we had to get box trucks, which Christoph's driving yesterday. unfortunately. And so it's start simple and then figure it out. And like as you continue to grow, just don't get too big, but like don't stay where you're at, right? So just continuing to be like, all right, how can we do this better? How can we do this next? I mean, for example, we're saving on our coffee cups, we're saving 50% of what it used to cost. So imagine that. Yeah, economies of scale, and going direct to supplier instead of through a middleman. And so it's just figuring out those relationships and how that works and how to track it. And you got to be good in like relationships are everything. I mean, you really got to be good, right? So it's just a weird connection. I had in Oregon who knew a guy in China direct. So we cut out the middle guy, went direct, which most people would never do. By the way, when you wire money to China, it's not a comfortable feeling because you're like, this could be a dumb idea, you know, because once you wire it, it's gone, you know, so it is over. So, yeah, but it's just starting really small and just continuing to build, you know.
Like so I think about, we used to meet in our kitchen table with, you know, our staff right at the beginning, and we did that for years, you know, didn't go out and rent an office space just because we had a business name right out the gate. So like you just start small, don't like overextend, you know, and then as you grow, then you can start, okay, let's do this office space. Let's, you know what I mean? Yeah. So just, yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I may be making you smarter than you really were, at least in the conversation with Jeff. I've always known you're the smarter one, Monique. It's okay. I remember having conversations with you and the truck. Because one of the things I think that is really interesting, read an article recently. It said, you don't have product market fit until you have $1 million in annual revenue. And I really got a little bit floored by that, but I thought, wow, like, okay, so really working to understand your customer and making sure you know the customer, you know the right market for you. If you're creating a geographic footprint, if you're working to implement what your product looks like. You guys did something I think that was so telling. You had a truck that you were tracking sales, and you knew where you were, and you knew who bought, and you knew how much they bought, and you knew what time of day and what location and what the influences of events were. Walk through how that informed so many of the decisions that you guys made as you move forward.
What's really funny, people thought that was the plan, and they were like, you are such a genius, dude. Like, you can show up on location, figure out the market, and then get a building there or buy a building or there. They're like, you were so smart. And I'm like, yeah, that was always the plan. You know, like that. It literally, but you're right. Like, we had a lot of data. No one would have put a coffee shop in Sims. No one. I wouldn't have. Yeah. I'd have been like, this is not where people buy coffee, right? So we thought the first time we took the trailer to Sims, we thought it was a fluke. We're like, there's no way we sold this much coffee here. Like, this had to have been some accident. This had to have been, maybe it was just new, maybe. So then we went back a second time. We're like, okay, and then same amount of sales. And I was like, that has to be 2 flukes in a row. Like, this can't be possible, right? So we just kept going back, kept testing it, and then we started putting the trailer out there more and more frequently, and the numbers still maintained. So then we hooked it up permanently in the parking lot, and then got a brick and mortar store 10 minutes away. Like, 2 stores in Sims, which would have never been looked at, I don't think, if we didn't have the data that you're talking about, which is crazy, you know? So, yeah, it was really...
It's such an interesting thing, because I think you begin to test. I mean, I think a lot of times when we're trying to build something, we jump into the execution mode. And it was really cool to watch the test. I mean, even as simple as like, did you buy a truck when you started?
Dude, that's a crazy story.
Yeah.
So we put all of our money into the trailer, and we did it all like borrowing cash, right? So, and I can walk you guys through that in a bit. But I didn't have money to buy a truck. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So my dad had like a Ford 150 2000 model, like one of those old school Fords. And I was like, can I borrow this for a bit? Like, we literally, so anyway, driving around, I was looking at trucks online, trying to figure this out. So what's crazy is sometimes we talked about, one of your questions about scars and nightmares. Yeah. So we had an issue happen with our generator, so we could make no revenue, and then it was a nightmare. And so my buddy Andrew calls Ty Bullard and goes, hey man, my buddy's got that food truck. And Ty was like, oh yeah, I know Jeff, he's crazy. And he goes,
yes.
he goes, And Ty was like, well, just, you know how Ty is. We'll run an extension cord. I mean, what does he need? Like, well, I'll get my electrician to hook something up. Just tell him to come down here and sell coffee. So by the time that conversation happened, we figured out what was wrong with the generator. So we got it running again. But then I felt like I owed him. So I was like, man, like, thank you so much for allowing us to even do that. Yeah. Let me just come set up at your location and we'll just treat your, employees or whatever. So because of that headache and nightmare, that conversation started. Then I felt like I need to go, just say thanks so much. So Ty walks into the trailer and I was like, man, try this shot, and try this and try that, So we're over caffeinating him. And he goes, what are you doing about a truck? And I was like, oh, dude, I'm looking. I got this, man. Because he was like, because that thing's a piece of garbage, dude. He was like, that looks horrible. He literally was
like, you have this beautiful trailer, brand new, pulled by, he was just like, this doesn't.
Yeah, he was like, that thing looks awful. And I was like, oh, we're figuring it out, man. And it's no big deal. And he goes, why don't we just sponsor you a truck? And dude, I literally, like my eyes like welled up with tears. And I was like, you're joking. He goes, dude, it's not a big deal. He goes, we'll just sponsor it. And I'm like crying. So then I call Mo and she's crying and I'm crying and everybody's crying. Ty, he's just like, whatever, man. That's no big deal, So, but it was the coolest thing ever. So then what I loved was, so we had our little logo on the truck, and you remember this, and then it was sponsored by Joe Bullard. Yeah. So it was really smart for him because everywhere we went, in front of thousands of people, including the fair, he had his brand associated with us for the entirety, right? So then once we actually started cash flowing a little bit and making a little bit better, I went back to him and bought the truck. So, and he gave me a ridiculous price. And I was like, this is so stupid. Like, you can't. I told him I wanted to buy it for the cost of the truck when he gave it to me. I was like, I don't want a deal. I don't want a discount. And he was like, yeah, that sounds good. And then threw me this ridiculous number that was so cheap. I was like, oh. So anyway, we paid for the truck outright, but I always kept the Bullard stickers on the truck because it was just, it was like, I just wanted to honor his company and what he did. And so I was like, even though we own it outright, we've got the title, dude, Bullard stays on there as long as we run that truck. And so it was just cool.
It absolutely is. And I'll say, having been in so many locations where that truck and that trailer came in, I mean, I'll tell you this, if you saw that black and yellow trailer with that beautiful logo, I don't know who designed it, but it was great, come into, you were like, yes. I mean, your mouth starts drooling. And I'll tell you, where it even more was incredible is somebody else is paying for your coffee and you get one for free, and then you're like, yes, I'm there. I will be the person that's camping out overnight to make sure I'm in line to be able to get that. I am not above free coffee. So yes, I believe in it. And I think what's great is you guys were developing that brand and you're building the buy-in. And Jeff, you talked a little bit about culture, and so I want to hit that because you guys, you're very intentional. Very intentional. And in some ways, it's almost like you've got a culture company that sells coffee. All right, so they've got some stuff for us. I like this. Okay.
No, but you're right. I mean, culture to me was everything. And culture is, it's like how do you have conflict, which you're always going to have, but how do you also stay healthy? And how do you do conflict in a healthy way? Instead of like in a petty way or a demeaning way so it's really like in conflict is great.
Yes,
like if
absolutely.
you can, so some of the stuff that we used to do at the spot we met at, right? Like we were running through, like Patrick Lencioni has a couple of books, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, The Advantage. There's several books that we read through as a leadership team, and we actually exercise those. Like that 5 Dysfunctions material, It's kind of like intimidating a little bit. It's kind of scary to sit in a room and just actually get real with people. But man, what we found is it's so much healthier because it builds a base layer of trust. And if you don't have trust, you don't have anything, right? And so it builds that base layer, and then everything else stacks on top of that, right? And so I think it starts with trust, and then, it just scales from there. But dude, so we printed these a couple years ago. These are just, we call them culture cards. So it's 55 or 57 or 56 or something. So it's just statements that we make as a company that we believe in. So we hand these out to like our team members. They'll tape them up. Like some stores, I've seen them, they'll do like 1 card a week and they'll just have it on the POS. But I mean, you can just read through some of these. I mean, so these are just, like I just picked this one first, number 35. Instead of fearing conflict, we embrace it with kind candor. And so that's just culture card number 35. So people are like, all right, cool. Like, I'm not going to be scared of conflict. I'm not going to be scared to say, hey, that's a bad drink. Let me show you how to make it better, right? And so...
very little in this is about making coffee, but it's about how we handle our team and how our team, the community we've built and that kind of thing. It's all,
Well, and I think they bleed over into work. This is card 53. Self-awareness is everything.
Everything.
If it's self-awareness, then it changes the way you perceive yourself because you're real. You're real with yourself and being engaged in that, and that transforms how you treat yourself and others. So that's great. Love this. An attitude of gratitude always wins, number 56. That's a good one. Okay, so because this is interesting. And I'll say this is one of the things we see a lot of times. You're trying to scale. You're trying to throw everything at the wall. You're trying to figure out, I'm pouring money into this, or I'm reinvesting what I make into it. And I'll say I've been guilty of this too. Culture isn't usually the thing that you're like, hey, let me make sure we put this first. What did that look like? Was it from previous experiences where you're like, oh, no, we've got to make sure that we're baking this in? What did that look like for you guys to really implement this and take the time to build something out like that?
Yeah, it's being really intentional. Like, everything else is so easy to scale. It would be, I could do 100 coffee stores tomorrow. Like, easy. Like, the nuts and the bolts of it are so simple and so easy. Culture is insanely hard to scale. And it's tough for me to find models of franchises or models of anything else where culture actually does scale and actually does work. And so it's at least us having that thought and that question of like, this is super important. So how do we, and we've done another exercise this year. It was actually when we met in that room right there. So that was a second exercise on top of this of how to continually keep getting better with our culture. And that was based on another book we read. But so it's keeping that in the forefront, and most people don't. Most people lose it. Like, once they start making money and once they kind of start getting into it, they're like, that's really cute, but let's just start let's keep hammering down stores or whatever. So I don't know, man, our turnover rate is insanely low. Like, insanely low. The average turnover rate, I think, in fast food is 150%. So that means people quit faster than you can hire more people. Last time I checked, I think our turnover was like 11%, 13%. Like, it was something crazy. And most of that is like, I'm moving away to go to college, or I'm moving away to, I got married and I'm moving out of the city or whatever. Like, it's wild.
If you happen to be streaming in right now, please understand that when that stat, that 11%, the audience's mouth just dropped.
It's wild.
That's unheard of.
It's crazy.
That's incredible.
But I think it's because we do this stuff, and this stuff is hard. Coffee is very easy. Food is very easy.
You say that, but there's a lot of people who suck at that, Jeff, too.
I know.
Let's not throw that as like, anybody can do that. It's tough. This is tough. It's all tough.
Yep.
The way you guys have done it is really interesting. Now, you just a moment ago said, like, we could do 100 and we could knock it out. But obviously, funding is part of that journey. Talk a little bit, if you would, about, you said, you borrowed as you're going into it. How are you making it work in regard to funding and funding new operations? Because right now you guys have how many physical locations?
7.
Seven physical locations.
Working on 8.
All right.
Yeah.
You're getting ready to move in one, right?
Yep.
Is that publicly disclosed?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Sure, why not?
It's not. It's
now.
It's privately,
It is now.
publicly. I didn't say which one and I didn't say where, so just tune in and find out. Yeah, there you go. See, that was easy. That's why we only say certain things that we can drip out, right? Okay. How are you doing that? How do you know when it's the right time for the next one?
And maybe you can share how we started, because we've had to borrow that a couple more times.
So we've got, like, years ago I set up like one of these, and if you know this game, you'll understand a little bit, like a very specific whole life insurance policy, and you can borrow against it and blah, blah, blah. So I read some book like years ago, set this up when I couldn't afford it. But I've been so thankful that I did, because we've just kept up with the payments, kept up with everything. So we were able to borrow against that policy for, I think, $35,000.
Yeah, we had $35,000 in it after several years of, we pinched pennies just knowing, hey, one day we might need this.
Yep.
And sure enough.
And when it was time to pull the trigger. So $35K, and then we put, I think, everything else on, and I don't recommend doing either of these, so please don't take this as financial advice. Take this as my dumb story. We put the rest of everything else on interest-free credit cards. Dave Ramsey would kill me, I know.
It was
Dave,
just two of them, and we knew worst case we'd get a bank loan to pay him off in time.
Yeah.
But we were like, but it's free money for now. If we can make it work, we got 18 months. If we can't get the coffee thing to work in 18 months, we should do something else anyway.
Sure.
And we were able to pay them off. So we paid them off, didn't pay a dime of interest, and just slowly but surely just kind of started cash flowing, and just slowly but surely built up. Well, I feel like we've always made opportunities, jumped into the next thing before we were probably technically ready, but just jumping first kind of gives you that, like, your brain just figures it out. Like, when you go get into a building, you're like, I don't think we can afford the rent here. Probably can't figure out how to, like Dolphin Street, when we jumped in that, I was like, I have no clue how to run a brick and mortar. I have no idea. So, but we jumped first and then just figured it out on the back end how to make it work. And it's been one of the best moves we've made, right? And so,
Dolphin Street, we were able to, we'd paid back that insurance policy, and then it had grown as well. So then Dolphin Street, that's how we funded it. So the first two main locations we funded, borrowing against that whole life policy, but not having to go, borrow
To a bank, a commercial
else.
lender, yeah.
And really after that, the Sims store, the Stone Airport store, we all cash flowed. Like, we cash flowed. And we're very, we operate slimly. We do a lot of the stuff, don't, pay ourselves a ton on purpose to be able to put it back in. So that's how we were able to do those until we got to the bank location. And that's where we had to make some other decisions.
I was going to say, the bank location, I remember
Could
watching
not
this.
cash flow
If you
that.
don't understand where this is out on, give me the crossroads here.
Schillinger and Cottage Hill.
Cottage Hill. Okay, I was like, I know it's Schillinger, but Schillinger and Cottage Hill, big location, big opportunity here. Bank location, so what did you have already working for you? That there had been a drive-up window, right? Yeah. Okay,
Right, yep.
but that's a big one. So how did that one
Very
happen?
expensive to pull.
Man, that's been the best move so far we've made in the entire company, and it's not, we're not geniuses. The smartest guy.
Monique is, you're not.
Mo is definitely a genius. The smartest guy in Mobile in this space, in my opinion, is Will Fusiati, the founder of Fusackley's. So Will called me and said, you need to buy that bank. He goes, if you don't buy it, I'm going to buy it. And I don't have time for this. And I was like, like, I'm not getting in your way, am I? He goes, dude, I literally don't have time for another project. He goes, just buy it and do something awesome with it. And I was like, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Immediately called our bank and was like, hey, can I get funded for $800,000 or whatever it was, And they were like, what? So anyway, we looked at it, did the whole thing. We were able to provide the, enough down. But we had run some other numbers, which was really interesting. Because we were just looking in that area, and I had a construction company run me numbers on building like a double drive-through, doing the whole thing. How much would the rent be? And it was like $9,000 a month or something. And that's, you don't own anything. You were just a tenant. You were just in there renting, right? So I was like, man, that's really expensive. So then and that was small building, double drive-through. So then when I ran the numbers on actually owning property, I was like, it's so much bigger, 4 drive-through lanes, inside space, office space that we desperately need, cool vault that people can hang out in, and it was like so much cheaper. So that almost made my decision. Getting another quote from a company of nothing I would own versus, like, there was no negatives. It's like you own the real estate, it's cheaper, it's better, there's more everything made sense. And so I slept great after, like, most people would be really scared to sign a, $800.
It was our first bank loan, essentially.
Yeah, it's like,
so it was a big deal, especially because we were so intentional to cash flow.
Yep.
We'd go into something maybe a little early, but we still knew we had the money for it, and so that was it. It was scary, but I think it was the right decision.
And I think it's one of the things that we recognize in almost every company at some point in the journey. You're going to need a commercial lender, or you're going to need an outside investor. And so working to prepare for that, I think, is a really important part of that journey. So I always tell people, like, you need to have those conversations before you're ever ready for it, because sometimes you learn very quickly that which you didn't know, and that which you didn't know you needed to know. So working through that is really hard. And look at how that's working. And even downtown here, we're sitting on it. So Jeff was like, well, we can just pass the phone around and get orders delivered over here. I was like, Look at that. What
I thought it'd be a good idea. We can run it down on the golf cart. We can still do it.
Yeah, there you go. Before you leave, you can get that. But you guys have done a lot in that. Now, a lot has worked out really well, but we know there's scar tissues. Okay, so kind of take us in and share with us maybe some of the things that you've learned that, man, it hurt or you lost sleep over it, or was it a challenge, a setback. Talk a little bit about that, because I think it's important for us to be really transparent as people are thinking about building businesses. Like, nothing is an overnight success. Let's start out by saying that nothing is an overnight success. It takes a lot of work, a lot of thinking, a lot of passion and commitment. I mean, like, for the Yellowhammer story to exist, it doesn't happen without both of you committed to this, right? So there's a lot that goes into that. Talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that you're like, hey, key lessons learned here. Don't do this.
Oh, we definitely got a big one. You want to share this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is probably the most sleep I've lost in the 8 years we've run this business. So we had a deal for a new shop development. We were going to be a tenant in. So here's the lesson. I'll go ahead and give you the lesson up front, and then I'll tell the story. It's a really good idea to have a lawyer look at things before. Don't think you're too smart to sign leases.
Yeah, that's really important.
And don't think you're a genius and just everything.
And I'll tack onto that. We're scrappy. This guy right here might or might not have plumbed Dolphin Street, right? Because
Nobody will ever know.
And so we're like, so we'll figure.
As long as it passes inspection, it doesn't matter, right? There you go.
They were like, why are these water lines going? I was like, I think it takes a lot of water to fry chicken. I was like, I don't know. It looked like that when I got here.
But there's a lot that, like, at the beginning, we just had to figure out how to do. We didn't know, but we figured it out without, in my head, I'm like, I'll figure out this accounting thing. I'll do this, because we literally did not have the money to pay someone. And so with the first couple leases that we ever signed, I just read through them. I knew I wasn't like technically smart enough for it, but I was like, I can understand what this stuff says, right?
And our first lease was with Will, right? That was Dolphin Street.
The Dolphin Street.
Dude, I trust Will.
It was like
Will's like, bro, this is like a 2-page document. Sign it. Please don't ever call me with headaches in that building. And I was like, that's cool. I can do that.
We were in that mindset of like, man, we can do this. It's cool. So huge lesson learned was I will never sign something again without a lawyer, somebody who knows what they're doing. Look at it, and but also, and at the time we probably didn't have the money to pay somebody, but like there's at some point you got to decide, okay, like we need to pay for this, and that's it. It's okay. So anyway. That was basically the lesson.
But it was brutal. So we get down there. We have a fully executed lease. The build-out hasn't started yet, so they're still working other tenants. What was pitched to me was it's going to be like a chicken wing joint or something on the other end. I was like, that sounds awesome. This will be so much fun. So then what happened was what had happened was so then I catch wind that they put a smoothie shop in there, and I was like, ooh. We sell smoothies and wraps and everything else they sell, right? Go back to the guy, and I was like, hey, listen, like I get it. I understand you have to sign the space. Not a big deal. I'm not mad about it. But that rent price we talked about was really agreed upon based on chicken and not on a competitor on the other end there that's selling the same product. And he was kind of like, it's fully executed, man. Sucks for you. And I was like, ugh, I don't like that. Like, that's not cool, So it was a very intense time, and so, dude, and it got really weird. Like, and they're, like these guys are, they're big boys, right? And so we're just a little, small little company, and these guys know what they're doing. So it's really uncomfortable when you show up to your house and there's 3 letters taped to your door, and it's like we're suing Yellowhammer Coffee, we're suing Jeffrey Roberts, we're suing Monique Roberts, and like. Your kids are coming home from school going, Dad, why is there 3 of them? Like, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. Like, it is not, talk about losing sleep. Like, this is not fun. So I remember who did I call? I called a realtor, Cameron, I think. What's his name? Weevil. Yeah. I called him. I was like, man, I'm scared. Like, I'm like crying, He's like, oh, I was like, dude, I'm in a lot of trouble. I said, I need like the biggest, baddest, meanest lawyer that can just help you. He was like, oh, dude, I got a guy. I was like, I'll see the guy all of us hate because the guy never loses. I was like, I need him, So call him. He's got an office down here. And it was just funny. Started talking to him. He was like, Jeff, you're in a lot of trouble. I was like, oh no, that's what I'm calling you. Like, he goes, let me do some homework. So man, once you get a dog like that on your team, like he was able to mitigate a lot of this problem, right? So anyway, but dude, it's just, but it all could have been solved if he could have looked over everything first, right? And so it's just a lesson learned. We were able to get out. We were able to all come to an agreement. But like, if I didn't have him, we'd have got crushed. I mean, it would have been a couple of lawsuits. It'd have been brutal.
I'll say as a disclaimer here, we always encourage you to find your accountant, attorney, and banker before you take advice from others. So make sure you have that in place.
Don't do it our way.
No.
Don't lose sleep for weeks. I
think everybody who says the things that I just said about attorney, accountant, banker is the person who has felt the pain of not having those. So one of the things, we talk a lot about is that individuals going out to take that first building, we talk about understanding lease terms. So if you're going into a triple net lease, they're like, huh?
Understand what a triple net lease means.
Understand that first, because what you just said, I'm used to entering into a residential situation, which is like, I've got those kinds of things, and I understand that. And JC's out there understanding. JC's got that real estate framework. It's really tough. It's really tough when you ask that question, like, hey, why did you just give me the taxes for this building? Oh, because you pay for them. What do you mean? I don't own the building. You own the building. Yes, this is a triple net lease. Congratulations. Or that insurance comes through it. So all those things. And so it's really important. Again, understand that when you start, there's a lot of stuff you just don't know. And you can't know. You can't know. And so it's really important in this to have people. I mean, having the opportunity to work with Will is huge. The guy's done it. He's legit, and he cares enough about you that you're not in a situation you're worried that you're going to get stabbed in the back. But I think that's one of the things that a lot of founders, they struggle with is they get out and they start doing something only to find out that I'm kind of naked out here on my own. I'm doing this thing, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't even know who I should talk to about that. So that's awesome. Let's beyond the lease piece and signing that. What words of advice would you give to your younger self in preparing for this journey?
Should have done it sooner.
Okay.
Should have done it sooner. Should have, but I didn't have the idea. I didn't have the not. Like I know it's all hindsight, right? But like I'm 40. I'm almost 41. Be 41 in a couple days. Like, dude, I'm like I just feel so tired, right?
Yeah.
But if I started when I was 20, I'd be 28 and I'd be cranking, So part of me wishes I'd have done it sooner,
Sure.
But then part of me knows that
everything builds on experiences.
It does. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have the idea. Didn't have the, So it's. But if I could look back, if I could have backed it up 20 years, that'd be awesome.
I think that's such an interesting piece because I look at it a lot with it. There's a certain line that you look at entrepreneurship, and usually founding happens in your 20s, or it doesn't happen until your late 50s or 60s. And a lot of it is because we enter into those relationships and commitments in life that oftentimes make it harder for us. But you also talk like, how do you raise a kid when your other kid is a company? It's a company.
That is true. I understand that because we literally started it. I mean, in our 30s, 3 kids. The youngest was 5 months old at the time. I mean, she was a baby, And but I think I remember one of the things. I mean, he said, why a little bit of why we started it, but also we did ask ourselves the questions because it was dumb to quit 2 jobs with all these kids. But like we knew that even if it failed, Jeff's a worst case scenario guy, so he ran the worst case scenario. If it fails, like we tried, right? And like we won't have the regret of wondering should we have, taken a step out, basically.
It was literally just hedging against regret. Yeah. Like I knew it like once to flip the switch for me, I knew I would be on my deathbed and I knew I would say, God, I should have just tried that coffee thing. Like I should have done it and it's too late, right? So it was kind of a hedge against regret of just saying, like Mo said, even if we go bankrupt, even if it fails, even if it doesn't work, like at least I would be like, well, dude, I gave it my all. Like, and I tried it and it didn't work out, and that's okay. Like, I would rather have that scenario than have the regret of never trying. And once that flip switched, it was over.
And I think that's such an important piece. Again, it's the piece that sits inside you. Finding ways to experiment and test is important in it. And we look out in the audience, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are out here who've got that. They've got their own scar tissue of what they've learned and gone through. But that's really important. Now, it may be the same advice, but look out to those young entrepreneurs in the future who are thinking about starting out. What are you telling them?
I would say just stick to it, because I will say, I mean, it's not advice necessarily to our younger selves, because, I mean, we did, you know, there were times, I mean, I laugh. Some of the times he'd come home pulling the trailer into a torrential downpour. He'd have to be like there plugging it up. I mean,
If I had a video.
I wish we had video cameras set up to watch.
If I had a video of this, you guys, we would play it on there, and you guys would have the best laugh of your lives. Like, I remember, it was one of those Mobile seasons where it rained for about 7 or 14 days straight, every single day.
24 hours a day.
Rain is not great for a coffee truck, right?
No,
Nobody wants to get out. Nobody wants to come buy coffee. We had been parking at the grounds, trying to stay under an awning. I was just so frustrated. So I pull into our driveway, and I'm just angry. We had sold no coffee. I'm just mad, and I can't control the weather, and I'm angry. So I remember I went to open the door in the trailer, and something hit me, or maybe the door hit me, or maybe some water fell, like when the door opened or whatever. I swear to you, if I had this, I was like, I can't say what I really said, but I was like, you rain, and I literally just I started chunking stuff. Like, if you'd have drove by my house, you'd have said, this guy has lost his freaking, I'm throwing stuff across my front yard, screaming to the top of my lungs at the rain. That's how psycho I was. And I wish I have one of those little Arlo cameras, and I wish it would have recorded that, because I would save that clip for eternity, you know. And so, but I was just so angry, so mad.
And if that's not the picture of entrepreneurship,
it literally was. Yeah, I mean, I was chunking so much crap into the.
So he comes back into the house drenched. The kids are like, Daddy.
Yeah. Mo gets home and is like, why is there so much crap in the front yard? I was like, don't start with me, you know.
I don't even know. Something random happened with
don't
the truck.
Start.
The wind blew. I don't know.
But
I just wish I had that footage. Like, I wish it would have been
even in that
captured.
moment, you know, there were still a few things he had to do before he could come in. He had to plug the trailer up. We had a fridge operating. So, like, there's a few things, and he still did it, you know. So, like, he had his moment, but then he did it, and then he got up the next morning at 4 a.m. and went again, you know. So I just think
it's true.
You're gonna have your moments. You might melt down a little bit, but like
or go psycho like me, and both is fine. Call me if you're going psycho, because trust me, I've been there. I can walk you through it.
But like making sure, for one, you know, you have a good team and that you're investing in that good community, and then but also sometimes it's going to take just getting up the next day and doing it again, and it's hard, but you just have to do it, you know. So.
Great words of wisdom here. There's so much, I think, in the story of Jeff and Monique, the work of Yellowhammer. We're excited that we could have you guys with us. Certainly your story, your care, your passion, your culture, your coffee, all amazing things, and we're delighted to have you. And so if you're watching right now, we're going to take you offline. If you're in the audience here, now you can ask some questions. So join us next month. The third Wednesday of every month at 8:30, we'll have David Morris from QB Country with us.